PC fanboys are going to cringe when they hear this, but I think macOS is the best operating system, full stop, no competition. Its design, the apps, the speed, the ecosystem, it's just so hard to beat. But unless you're one of the 100 million Apple Mac users out there, macOS is pretty much off limits. Except there was a time where installing macOS on a PC wasn't just possible, but super common. I remember in school my mates flexing on me that they were able to install macOS on their crappy school laptops. And I spent so long trying to do the same, with no success. I could never get it working. Now fast forward almost 2 decades and it feels like Hackintoshing, as it was so lovingly called, has just kind of disappeared. But why? Well, to find out, I want to unpack what kicked off the Hackintoshing movement. How did it get started? And even try to install it on this $99 PC that I found on Facebook Marketplace. Also, I can find out what the heck happened to the Hackintosh, because you're watching Legendary Tech.
And yes, it's true.
It was WWDC June 2005, and Steve Jobs took to the stage and dropped a bombshell. Apple is switching from PowerPC to Intel processors. PowerPC had been the main processor of choice for Apple, and it's what's inside my vintage iMac G3 right here. But of course, it was time to part ways with the PowerPC. It just wasn't delivering on performance, and Apple had some big plans for their Mac lineup. However, this created a really interesting side effect. For the first time, Macs and PCs would share the same basic architecture. They would essentially be the same technology, just packaged in a different way. And of course, Apple tried to lock down their systems with special firmware and security chips. But where there's a will in the tech community, there's usually a hack. See, within weeks, not months, weeks of the first Intel Mac shipping in January 2006, a developer known as CRG92 released a modified version of macOS Tiger. But it didn't stop there. A community called OSX86 project formed almost overnight, and Apple promptly sent them a cease and desist letter, but it was too late. The idea had spread, and Hackintoshing was born. The last time I owned a PC was when I was like 13, and the last thing I really tried doing on my PC was turning it into a Hackintosh. So I thought, could I do it now, for old time's sake? Could I make a Hackintosh in 2025? This is a HP Elite desk. It says Elite book, but it's obviously not a notebook. I bought this bad boy for $99, which was probably way too much, but I needed something to replace my sister's trashy laptop that I've used in almost every video I've done. This thing. Oh, yeah, it's completely fried. Like, it's dead. This little HP PC has an i5 processor. Let's go. And 8 gig of RAM and 480 gig of hard drive space. So it's not bad. I actually bought it because I'm trying to run every version of Windows on it, which has taken way longer than I thought it would. But if you want to see that video, hit subscribe. But today, I really want to know if this thing has what it takes to run macOS. It's a tall order. When I was a kid, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to install macOS on my PC wasn't because of the software or the speed, it was because of the interface. Even PC boys were jealous of that macOS design. It just felt so clean, so thoughtful, like everything was designed to help you focus on one thing. And that's exactly the feeling I get with Opera's latest browser, Opera One R2. Opera One R2 is designed to keep your content front and center, while giving you powerful tools to make everyday tasks easier, like this built-in player in the sidebar. You can control your music from Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Music, or any of your favorite streaming services without switching tabs. You can even detach the player completely and move it anywhere, inside or outside the browser. You can also detach whatever video you're watching, and just like the player, you can move it around anywhere you want. And with split screen, you can drag a tab down and instantly compare pages side by side with no extra windows. Dynamic themes, oh, this is the good stuff. Dynamic themes let you customize the look and feel exactly how you want. There's more than just a few options too. You can adjust everything from background animations to sound effects. With tab islands, you can group your tabs by context. Expand whatever you need and collapse whatever you don't. And tab traces leave a subtle underscore beneath your most recently used tabs. The darker the underscore, the more recent the tab. Pretty sick. It's those little details that I love so much. But Opera One R2 also comes with Aria, a built-in AI tool that lets you ask questions, generate images, or even recognize them right from the page that you're on. You can open Aria's command line with a quick shortcut and ask without opening any new tabs. What is 10 miles in kilometers? Generate a dog playing a Nintendo DS. Alright, not bad, not bad. With its image recognition tool, you can even upload a photo and get instant insights. Opera One R2 doesn't just look good, it works with you. It's clean, fast, and completely focused on your flow. Try it for free using the link in my description and pinned comment. It's actually kind of wild to mess around with. Huge shout out to Opera for supporting this video. Now let's get back to the chaos. But you're probably wondering, and I know I did, how does Hackintoshing actually work? What is actually happening that enables macOS to be installed on a PC? Well, see, in the beginning, Hackintoshing was crude. People would distribute modified OS X installation DVDs with names like JAS and Callaway and Iatkos, basically pirated copies of OS X that had been patched to work on PC hardware. These methods were legally questionable at best, and the results were pretty unstable. But everything changed in 2008 with something called Boot 132. For the first time, you could use an unmodified Apple OS X install DVD that you actually purchased. This was kind of wild because you weren't modifying Apple's code anymore, just using a clever bootloader to make your PC appear to be a Mac. So let me try and explain how this actually works, because it took me a hot minute to get my head around it. See, a real Mac has an EFI firmware instead of the BIOS that PCs use. It also has a special chip called the SMC System Management Controller that manages hardware functions. But the Hackintosh community created brilliant workarounds for both. First, bootloaders like Chameleon and later Clover would emulate Apple's EFI environment. Secondly, a magical piece of software called Fake SMC, a kernel extension or KEX that pretended to be Apple's SMC chip. This was the secret sauce. Without it, macOS would simply refuse to boot. Think of KEX like drivers. They tell the operating system how to work with specific hardware. And the community created hundreds of them for graphics cards, audio codecs, network chips, and more. Okay, so according to this post, apparently all I need to do is create a USB stick with a Mac, good news, have a Mac, build something called an EFI folder, and use something called OpenCore to trick macOS into thinking that this HP is a real Mac. And then I have to disable half of the BIOS. Okay, this could be a mess, but technically it should be possible. The only problem is this forum post is from 2017, but I'm worried I'm not gonna be able to find all the right links and the information I need. But if I could make a $100 Mac Mini, that would be insane. It looks like the first thing we need to do is to create a macOS USB drive. Do I have a USB drive? Aha, okay, yes. Okay, so I am currently trying to download macOS Ventura. Ventura has been confirmed to work on this HP with some quirks, but I thought I would just go big, right? Go big or go home. Next, we have to work out how to get it onto this USB disk. No, it's not large enough. No, it's an 8 gig drive. Son of a biscuit, dude. I don't even think I have a USB stick that's more than 8 gig. Who even uses USB sticks anymore? We're gonna go full overboard and use a flippin' Samsung SSD. Now what we need to do is update a few things. See, this install is obviously for Mac computers, so we need to install or update or change the folder called EFI. From what I can tell, an EFI folder just gives macOS an idea of the specs of the HP. And luckily for me, there's a GitHub page that already has one that is tested, I think. So we should now be able to follow this through and get everything set up. Now, if this comes off a little complex, it's because it is. See, the approach I'm taking is similar to that of the very first Hackintoshes. But in 2010, a user named TonyMacX86 completely transformed the scene by releasing a tool called MultiBeast. It was an all-in-one tool that installed all the necessary KEX and configurations with just a few clicks. A year later, he released UniBeast, which automated the creation of installation media. So these tools democratized Hackintoshing. Suddenly, you didn't need to understand terminal commands or edit configuration files. But the OS X Lion release in 2011 presented a whole new challenge. See, Apple stopped selling DVDs and moved to the Mac App Store. But the community adapted, right? Creating tools to turn downloadable installers into bootable USB drives. The community even created detailed buyer's guides with exact hardware components guaranteed to work with macOS. If you followed these guides, you could build a machine with better specs than Apple's offerings at a fraction of the cost. And interestingly, by this point, mainstream tech sites were starting to publish their own Hackintosh guides. Lifehacker had a series called Building a Hackintosh. YouTubers showed off their Hackintosh builds. What started as an underground hack had almost become normal. If you couldn't afford or justify Apple's high price for hardware, you could just build your own. The community even got creative with aesthetics, modding PC cases to look more Mac-like and creating custom case badges with cheeky labels like Hackintosh inside. There were even laptop Hackintoshes. The Dell Mini 9 netbook became famous as a near-perfect Hackintosh around 2009. This gave people tiny, affordable Mac laptops when Apple offered nothing in that size range. Apple's co-founder Steve Wozniak himself reportedly signed one and called it so cool. And as Tony MacX86 put it, it's easier and faster for me to install Snow Leopard on a PC than it is to install Windows 7. So, I think I have everything set up for this bootable disk. I am using my old iMac G3 keyboard because it's a Hackintosh, right? Yeah. So we need to press F10. Here we go. Oh, okay. Okay, we're in. We are in BIOS. Let's go. Let's try it. Samsung portable SSD. Whoa. I don't know what any of this means. What is happening? Not happening. So there seems to be some issues with my config file. Let's see if we can fix that. Here we go. Let's try this now. Let's go down to... What the frick? Wait, it just stopped. Did I not select it quick enough? What happened? What just happened? It literally just disappeared. Dude, we had it for like a second. Alright, we're gonna try this super quick. No! Okay, dude, I feel it. I feel it. It's this close. With each macOS update, Mountain Lion, Maverick, Yosemite, El Capitan, the community had to scramble to update their tools. And in 2015, OS X El Capitan introduced System Integrity Protection, a security feature that restricted what files could be modified even by administrator accounts. Again, not really aimed at Hackintoshes, but the community had to find workarounds. Plus, in 2018, Apple introduced the T2 security chip in their computers. This specialized hardware handled secure boot, encryption, and other security features that couldn't be easily emulated. Maybe Apple was aiming this at Hackintoshes. Around this time, the community started to fade. Updates to key tools became less frequent, forum posts went unanswered, veterans of the scene started moving on. It reminds me of the end of the jailbreaking movement. And then came the rumors. Apple was working on its own processors, moving away from Intel to custom ARM-based chips. Okay, you're probably wondering what's going on with the $99 Hackintosh. No. So getting everything set up, that was pretty easy. I was able to get my head around the different files I needed to try and boot the Hackintosh. What took me a while to get my head around was which version of macOS would properly work. I tried Big Sur, I tried Catalina, the freaking Catalina wine mixer. That's all I can think when I think of Catalina. What a great movie. Oh my gosh. And every single one pretty much gave me the same error. So I kept tweaking the config files, updating all the kex, rebuilding the EFI folder, trying different drive formats. But no matter what I did, I just couldn't get it to load anything. It just crashed. And then eventually, something did work. I don't even know what I've been looking at for hours, just making subtle tweaks, little changes, and this is the first time we've made any progress. Come on, baby, please. Surely we didn't make it just this far. But this is as far as I got. I let it sit for a minute, but that loading bar did not move. So I'd go back and forth, troubleshooting for what felt like hours. Was something wrong with the BIOS? Was I missing a driver? Like, what was going on here? Did I miss a setting in the config files? I tried every combo I could think of, and none of it worked. However, after a few days, I eventually realized that it wasn't macOS really causing these problems. It was my PC, which is a very common problem for anyone trying to Hackintosh, having the right PC hardware. But see, my situation was like a little different. It was a bit weirder. Technically, macOS can run on everything that's inside this thing, but the Elite Desk from HP has a quirk. It has both a VGA port and a display port for outputting. But here's the catch. The BIOS won't run through the display port, so trying to select macOS and trying to select my hard drive, you can't do it unless you're using the VGA. And macOS doesn't support VGA. So the errors I was getting was because macOS couldn't get past the fact that this was trying to install on a computer with VGA. I googled it for a very long time to see if I could find a solution, and I just kept hitting roadblock after roadblock. I even tried switching from VGA to DisplayPort halfway through installation, and that didn't work. It actually almost bricked my PC, so I'm a little bit stuck. In theory, this should be the perfect little Mac Mini, but that is not the case. So I might just stick to Windows on this thing. If you've done this before with this type of computer, please let me know down below, because it'd be sick to make it work. But what it has made me realize is Hackintoshing has well and truly become a lost art. It's kind of nuts to see like all these forum posts that just stopped getting replies in like 2017. So I guess we'll Hackintosh another day.
But there is just one more thing.
We are incredibly excited to announce our first step in this transition with our first chip designed specifically for the Mac. And we call it M1.
And of course, with this announcement, Apple confirmed they were leaving Intel behind. Their new custom ARM chips would power future Macs. It's pretty easy to recognize what this would mean for Hackintoshes. Apple had moved on, and Hackintoshing simply couldn't follow. Unlike jailbreaking and the way that Apple handled jailbreaking, Apple largely left individual Hackintoshes alone. No lawsuits against Tony Mac X86 or other community sites, no aggressive code in macOS updates specifically targeting Hackintoshes. And the question I kept coming back to, was Hackintoshing legal? I mean, that answer is kind of complicated. See, Apple's end-user license agreement was clear. macOS is only allowed to run on Apple hardware. But violating a license agreement is generally a civil matter, not a criminal one. So the more curious concern was the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, the DMCA. This federal law made it illegal to circumvent technological measures protecting copyright works. And that's exactly what bootloaders and patched kernels were doing, bypassing Apple's hardware checks. What really seems to have happened is that the movement didn't die by force, but by design. Apple's development path, App Store distribution, T2 chips, and finally Apple Silicon made Hackintoshing increasingly difficult and ultimately impossible and almost unnecessary. But just like jailbreaking your iPhone, there's something so rewarding about installing macOS on a PC. The challenge of it, the weirdness of it, it just shouldn't be. And although there are still people out there keeping the Hackintosh alive, the Hackintosh as I know it and remember it is long gone. Well, maybe not completely gone.